thing gave me some information on those two things. Rob Webb, your show, and today, how things are going on right now. One of the joyful things I like about that is that in the projects where we used to live, all over the United States, black people, people of color, they're now today are some of the most expensive areas to live. Okay, so we've already established our living arrangements. Where we live is very powerful because our energy is there. We bring the power, we bring the love. I mean, because ahead of time, they projected to be putting us in bad areas. So when they put us there in projects, like they do with the cattle and try to control things and all that, they actually brought the land up to the value shine like it does in Arkansas, coal to a diamond. Okay, self-esteem. So we have that energy here. You come from nothing to a very powerful being in this place where we live right now in Little Rock, Arkansas. So let me make that point going into this. Yes, so everywhere black people, so-called poor blacks, have lived, we've enriched the area based on them thinking they're putting us in a bad area to push us to the side, get rid of us. Poor families, right? So we got that. Now today in society, in the same areas, so to speak, so we're gonna use atmospheric pressure with this one. And well, not in the same areas, but in the same, well, I said area, I meant the same idea, same thing that is going on. So now, like gentrification or regentrification, whatever the word they're trying to use. So now they're saying that people who own housing, most people who rent houses to people, if you own housing, you're supposed to be a poor family, which is the government itself establishes you as a low-income housing person, that you need some help, housing, to pay for where you live, okay? Support, Social Security, all that, right? So, and yet, the people themselves who are low income or no jobs or whatever, public assistance, they don't have to pay the full rent. They only pay a certain amount of the rent, okay? So, and we know these are poor people, poor black and white in this country. So right now, the history of anything has justification in the comeuppance of it, okay? That the history of it all, we know that they have done these things. The government itself set this up. FDIC, federally insured FDIC, okay? All that. So the Fannie Mae and the home industry that were predatory lending, the banks and the predatory lending and all of that. The historical document shows that these educated people in these banks, in these buildings, who know how the system works, who set the system up for it to work for the people, to predatory lend the people, okay? This money, they knew they were setting the people up to lend them the money so when they get the home, they couldn't afford it, right? Now, that has happened to the people. So people have lost home, their credit scores are bad, low, all that. A lot of people have that issue on that history. Okay, we have that, right? Now, when you talk about bad credit scores, there was something they did on purposely done to the people, just as they put people in the project, so-called poor people in the project, purposely set us up for lots of things, even with the diet, the government cheese, all of that, purposely, right? So they're responsible based on their education, the amount of money, all these things, who they are, all of that, okay? So we know what's going on. So we're giving them all that because they're all educated, working at the bank and those institutions. So when a person says they're paying $300 a month rent because they own a house, if they pay $300, but the person who's renting them the house gets $900 rent. There's a gap space in there of $400, $500, $600. Where is that money actually being allocated towards either side, towards the person that's being assisted, or is it being taken by the person, the landlord, or the banks taking the credit for that? So their credibility can build up, and not the person's credibility who was set up already historically, predatory lending, all those decisions, redlining, racism, all of that, generationally, all of that. As we can, the document, as I was saying today, they talk about running people out of town, sharecropping. They took the land from all of that. So these historical documents, records, living arrangements that we have are available to us. Okay. Now, so with that, that person is paying $900 a month rent. So 900 times 10, 90,000, right? 10%. If you're putting down on a house 10%, you're paying $900 a month. You're paying $90,000 home, right? So, which says that the people who are renting the house is supposed to have top-notch credit and credibility, because they're maintaining a $900 a month home and a $90,000 value home. So that area itself should be an area where the money should be given to because of the income of the people. Anytime somebody's paying $900 a month rent in Little Rock, Arkansas, anywhere in Arkansas, then you only own the higher tier of credit, and to get credit, especially if you're paying that on a monthly basis. Some of these people have been paying it for years. Okay, so they have established their power base and who they are, and actually are carrying the landlord and the bank on their back, as we've always done. How beautiful is that? We are much more powerful than confusion. We are not totally confused. We're just so powerful that they have to use confusing methods to keep us from coming forth with this kind of energy. You see, just as the most powerful places we lived before, it's the same thing right now. Those neighborhoods should be able to get monies for homes. People should be able to buy a home who own housing, welfare recipients, who paid rent for a year, straight up for a year, and those people recorded it to the bank and said, okay, oh yeah, it's a $90,000. So that if there are 10 people who own housing living in a neighborhood, then that whole neighborhood should be a very powerful neighborhood. Each one of those houses, although the house may not look like it's worth $90,000, but they're getting $900 a month rent for it, which is a legal document that they've signed. Now, how do they get away with charging $900 a month when the house itself is not worth $90,000? Somehow that is getting by. So the criminal anthology is taking place again. Yet at the same time, our emergency sales, emergency medical team, things that we always got to come through, we're under pressure. We're under extreme amounts of pressure right now. Should flower ourselves up into them saying, okay, to us saying, okay, y'all done all these things to us, so this is an emergency situation. There should be emergency funding because y'all have set us up over the years, and now y'all are collecting money, but disguising it as if it's not that money. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you take money like that and don't give the people the credit for the credibility that they built based on you saying it's worth $900, but they're only paying $300. You can't take that and say, oh, they only coming out $300 out of their pockets, but the bank is getting $900. That's illegal. That's an illegal transaction. You see, that's taxation without representation. That's how you don't pay taxes on certain things, so to speak. But at the same time, it's how powerful we are. That whole neighborhood, that so-called poor neighborhood, see, that's how you should build up all the neighborhoods. right there. You don't have to. People don't have to move anywhere by using the truth that the area gives, that the universal order gives, that Little Rock, Arkansas gives, that black people give. We're the truth. Cold to a diamond. Okay, Africa, original people, slavery to what we are now, the greatest inventors of all times. You see? So my inventive self, I got to invent it, create an just like with the black farmers. When they spent all that money, keep from paying the black farmers after taking all their money, they spent more money with the lawyers. But the records show that they have on documentation, based on their movement of the pen and paper, that they were doing these things illegally. So they had to end up paying the farmers. So right now, those bad so-called low credit scores should be the highest credit scores in the land. Wherever we live, so-called poor people. So that intellect is there in us. They know that they seem to be using us, but they're using our intellect. You see, by putting so much pressure on so-called poor people, the intellect, the inventiveness of the creation process, the almighty, the most powerful source around, pressure, gives us these answers. So these are the answers that I have to share. Communicating what's going on right now, because that's the case that's going on with the housing. You see, the same with the diet. The diet wasn't correct. They had to correct the diet, and we see what happens with the diet: the diabetes, lupus, all the diseases we have. That's a destructive process in which they gave to us. The same with this. So now we have to stand up and say no. Okay, since you're doing that, let's go ahead and take advantage of this money that they're just giving out to these people. Let's demand on a large scale to have that credit given to each individual to bring those homes up to bear, whether they own that house or not. But the person that's renting that home to them should be able to, the people that's renting from them should be able to use that credit. Their credit score should be lifted so high that they can go buy a home anywhere they want to. Okay? And to bring up the neighborhood. And the banks are responsible for that because they are the ones who are doing it. The government itself is rendering these things to come about. They are the governing body of these things, making sure these things happen for the people, to the people. Okay? The renters and all of that. Historical documents have their comeuppance, as I said, and their thing to do for the people. And that's what it's all about. So under all this pressure, again, anytime there's pressure, a beautiful answer is going to come up. We can stress that to them, make them say, okay, when you smart people in the banks, college educated people, all of that, just like you would do a criminal background check and all of that, the same thing on this end here, on the tier end. It's the very same thing that's going on. These people are